Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Hopefully I've got a few minutes here before the fiance gets home from work. We can see if we can knock this out. So, this is the second video covering the order system in Line of Battle. If you've not watched the first video, I'd recommend going and taking a look at that before you watch this one, just so you're not confused. If you're familiar with the system, don't worry about it. You'll know where we're at. At the end of the first video, I believe we were finishing up talking about order writing and accepting orders for the divisional commands during the command phase. To start this video off, I really want to talk about Fluke stoppage first, and then we'll get to attack recovery. But first, let's take a look at the situation we had on map. I've moved the divisions that had accepted their attack orders and put them into kind of a what an attack might look like at this point. These are by no means optimal. I'm just moving people here so that we can talk about it and discuss it. So if you remember, we have McLaw's division right here, which is under orders to move down the Millerstown Road, and ultimately they're to take the John Munschauer house. Down here we have Hood's division, and they are under orders to sweep down through Houck's Ridge on their way to take the John Munschauer house. Longstreet, you can see, is kind of trailing behind. He's got his HQ with him. And if you remember, we have Pickett's division back here, which has still not accepted the attack order. So, all in all, this is looking pretty good for the Confederate player. We've got two really strong divisions that are both under attack orders. They're getting ready to hammer into part of the Union line that really is not super well defended, and they could potentially make some hay. However, one of my favorite things about the line of battle game system and the order system specifically is Fluke stoppage. This is going to be a representation of failures in leadership or leaders getting funky feelings and randomly deciding to halt attacks, or a courier comes to them and says, hey, you've got somebody on your flank, and they decide to stop everything. Ultimately, this is going to be something that happens to everybody when they play using the order system, but you don't know when or how severe it's going to affect what you're trying to do. The player really doesn't have much control over whether their division's fluke stop. There are things, as you can see by these modifiers, that are going to help you avoid fluke stoppage, but in general, sometimes there's just nothing you can do about it. So fluke stoppage kind of represents those random events that the player has no control over. If you're a competitive person, yeah, it's going to suck, but deal with it. It's part of the simulation. It's kind of part of the storyline. If you're playing solo, it's great. When you do fluke stoppage, the process for determining whether your division's fluke is going to be very easy. Let's also make it clear that your divisions are what you're going to be rolling for when you check for fluke stoppage. Game-specific rules might say brigades or whatever the case might be, but for all intents and purposes, we're talking divisions. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our divisions that we have under attack orders, and each division is going to make a base check roll. So if we look at this, the base check is 2 dice. We pass on a modified 6 or better. So let's say we roll for McLaws, we roll 2d6. He rolls a 10. Easy. We don't have to worry about him at all. We don't have to make a subsequent roll. He's good to go. Let's see if we can roll for Hood. He rolled a 7. He would be good to go as well. So for this turn, they both pass that base check of 6 or better. They can proceed moving in with their attacks, doing whatever they want. Now, let's pretend that neither one of them succeeded and they rolled 3s or 4s or 5s. Well, then we would need to make a subsequent roll. If you fail your base check, you've got to make a secondary check. Now, this is going to use your leader's command value. This is where the command rating for your leaders is going to come in important. Luckily, as the Confederate player, these two divisions are pretty good. So let's start with McLaws. He's a 3-3. We're going to use his command rating, which is a 3. We're going to take a look at the chart here. We're going to need a 7 or better on our subsequent roll for him to not fluke. 7. Okay, he's good to go. Then we would roll for Hood. He's a 4. We would need a 6 or better on his subsequent roll. And he rolls a 2. So Hood would fluke. Now, what does fluke mean? What's going to happen when we fluke? Ultimately, the key concept is that your attack is no longer going. You cannot take territory. You cannot assault enemy troops. You have to get back out of small arms range so that you're, I believe in the rulebook it's termed a more secure location. So for Hood, his entire division is now stopped. They're not under attack orders anymore. So if you look here, you can see that, okay, the 63rd Penn, they can see the 1st Texas. We're going to have to get out of small arms range. So during our movement phase, our activity phase, sorry, everybody in this division is going to have to get back out of the way of where they're going to be shot at by small arms. You can do this kind of however you deem fit. This would be legal right here. This crest line is going to block line of sight. So we're legal at this point. However, if I wanted to, I could probably still move these guys back. You know, I could do all sorts of stuff with these guys, moving them back. There's no real cut and dry, you have to move here, you have to move here, you have to do this. All you got to do is get to a more secure location. There's a little bit of player discretion right there. Simple enough, eh? Okay. So let's say that turn happened. Let's just move everybody in McLaws up. Let's say, oh, they're getting into it. They're still attacking. People are firing over here. We go to the next turn. Okay, so we still have an attacking division, which is going to be McLaws, and we have a division that is fluked. So at this point, if we look at our handy-dandy chart, we would look at attack recovery now. Because we have a division that's fluked, we're going to have to do what's called attack recovery for that division. Now this is similar, but in a little bit of a different way. So we're still going to make a base check. So here we have a division that has no wrecked or dead units. That applies. So we're going to pass on an 8 or better. At this point, the leader command value does not matter. You've just got to roll better than an 8 or better. Let's pretend, okay, perfect, 8. We pass. So we look at this again. There's going to be a subsequent die roll. That first pass is going to mean nothing if we don't pass the secondary check. If we're looking at attack recovery here, we've got Hood. He's a 4 rated individual. We're going to need a 7 or better. 8. Boom. So on this next activity phase, Hood is now back attacking again. Now let's look at that chart a little bit closer. You can see here, Hood's the best rated leader for his command value that we can have in the game. A 7 or better, okay, 7's average, but realistically, the likelihood of rolling better than an 8 and then better than a 7 or better again, it gets tough, especially after you've been engaged, you have some wrecked units, you have dead units. Your divisions could end up sitting in positions where they're not attacking for extended periods of time, and there's nothing you can do about it as a player. A little bit more explanation on that, too. You can't just write a new order to Hood. He is under overarching orders to Longstreet. So until this order is fulfilled for Longstreet's core, Hood, or any division that flukes, is going to be required to make an attack recovery. Now let's say Longstreet receives a new order from Lee. Okay, that means that this order is now kaput. All the divisional commanders will then have to try to accept it. You might be thinking that that's an easy way to get them out of attack recovery, but if a new order arrives, any divisions that are not under attack recovery can start implementing that order instantaneously. However, any of your divisions that are still attempting to recover have to recover first and then in the subsequent turn accept the new order. So it's tough. You'll see when we start talking about reserves how this is really going to help. And that's really all there is to Fluke stoppage and attack recovery. They're very simple to implement, but they have a huge effect on play, and players need to be aware that when they write attack orders, these sorts of things are going to happen. You could have the best leader in the world, you could have people in reserve, you don't have any modifiers. Sooner or later, you're going to roll badly and somebody's going to fluke. It's just kind of the nature of the beast here. But the situation in front of us has kind of given me a good opportunity to talk about what we're doing under our attack orders here. I think we're pretty much done with the command phase, and that's kind of the meat and the basic groundwork for the order system right there. While we're talking about attack recovery and the Fluke stoppage stuff, we obviously would have been rolling for Pickett every turn to try to accept his orders as well. But I want to take this opportunity to talk about how we're going about implementing our attack orders. So let's say right now Hood is fluked. He did not recover, and McLaws is the only division under this attack order. As the player, I have to follow my orders. Yes, it would have been much better if Hood's division was assisting McLaws, because then we'd have overwhelming force moving in this direction. However, that's not happening. So the attack's not optimal. As the player, I have choices to make, because McLaws has to attack. He's under the order to do it, but how he goes about doing it is up to him. Let's say that I'm the type of player that doesn't want to wreck this division right off the bat. And I look back here behind me and I say, oh boy, there's de Trobriand's brigade, there's Ward's brigade, there's all sorts of stuff back here. I don't think McLaws is necessarily going to be able to do that all on his own. So maybe I kind of drag my feet a little bit and hope that Hood can get back online, or Pickett can get up on my flank and help assist me in this attack. So, for instance, on this turn, during my activity phase as the Confederate player, I don't necessarily want to close with these enemy units here. I might just want to play it easy and take shots at range. Remember, if I don't move and I fire in the activity phase, the enemy's not going to get an opportunity to take those opening volleys. If I would try to get a little bit closer to the enemy and say move here and then try to fire here, I'm going to start opening myself up to opening volleys. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's the player's discretion. That's where the tactics of what you're doing is going to come into play. But know that you can slow roll it. Just because you're under an attack order doesn't mean that you got to try to charge through, every single possible opportunity to just bring pain and authority that way. No, you don't have to. As long as you're engaging the enemy and you're attempting to take ground or pursue your objective, then it's legal. And this is where we're going to run into situations that are a little bit ambiguous. If you're playing solo, it's not so much of an issue because you're the one that's determining whether what you're doing is legal or not. Let's say I'm playing one of my buddies and I take this division and I move everybody back 4 hexes. Well, technically I'm under an attack order. No general, if I'm ordering McLaws to advance and take this objective, he's not going to just run back on his own. That's what the Fluke stoppage is going to be representing. So you need to get into the headspace a little bit of, okay, if the divisional commander is under these orders, what's he going to do? And maybe take your hands off what's the optimal thing to do, because it's not necessarily an optimal thing for me to have to sit here and keep advancing and attacking these guys. Maybe it is. I'm just using this as an example. Now, if these guys, let's say they're all up here and these guys are all up in here, I mean, that's probably not going to end up being a good situation for this lone division attacking. If we have Pickett getting online and he's moving in this direction, I'm going to be bringing everybody with authority from Pickett's division, probably making a lot of charges, trying to assault quickly through here, and maybe I use McLaw's division to take those range shots to kind of pin the Union forces in front of me. That's perfectly legal. I know there's been discussions on Consim World where guys will say, oh yeah, if you come up to range, let's say I move all my guys up to this range and start taking longer range shots, and I sit here for a turn or two and continue to do that, well, yeah, technically you're still under the attack order. You're just dragging your feet. You're still firing. You're not falling back. You're engaging the enemy. That's okay. There are people who play the system and who are probably more knowledgeable about it than I am that would say, no, that's not right. You're under an attack order. You need to be actively moving forward every turn. I will disagree. And it comes down to play style a little bit. If I'm writing this order, when we talked about the order writing, and I thought that there was an opportunity for Hood's division to, really smash through here, and I didn't want McLaws to get heavily engaged necessarily, I might have written that to say McLaws, hold the enemy in place as a diversionary attack in the Trossel Woods, or whatever the case might be. You can word it however you want. And that's the fun part as being the player. You get to interpret it however you want. When you write orders to yourself, you're going to know what you mean by that. If you're having an order written to you or you're writing it to somebody else, it's a little bit of a different story. But that's an interesting situation to kind of talk about right there. Let's say that these guys are way back here. Uh-oh. What happened to them? Oh my, okay, there we go. Let's say, and this is totally hypothetical because I'm just going to explain another rule. Let's say Hood's division is they're trying to make an attack recovery. They've got a ton of dead units. Let's say Pickett's in the same situation. He's got a ton of dead units. And let's say McLaws has been engaged with these guys for, a couple hours. He's not making any headway. None of these other divisions are coming online. Even if they did, they're all beat up. There's probably no way that they can reasonably take the John Munschauer house without absolutely destroying the entire command. They probably won't be able to do it even if they do absolutely destroy their entire command. Well, there is a situation where the player can voluntarily go under Fluke. Let's see if I can find it here. If I was smart, I would have read it and then explained it to you. Okay, so right here, point number 5. The player can choose to end an attack he now considers futile. The distinction here is important. He must consider the attack as unable to achieve its objective, not that the objective is no longer worthwhile or fitting with the situation. So, if you can take it and destroy your command, I probably misspoke earlier. You're probably still required to do it there. It's a matter of can you or can you not. If you can, and you're going to be beat up and everybody's going to be wrecked, but you still can do it, you probably still have to do it. That's an interesting way to end an order. The other ways that we're going to end orders are, let's say we take the John Munschauer house and the Union are thrown out of here and they skedaddle and they run. Then that order is going to be over. We're going to revert this entire corps, Longstreet's entire corps is going to revert to no orders. That's a pretty likely way that orders are going to end. We already talked about a new order beginning its execution. And all of the command's divisions suffer Fluke stoppage. If everybody was under Fluke stoppage and we didn't have a single division moving, then the order would end. We'd revert to no orders, and we'd be able to receive a new order. This is also, I think, maybe a good opportunity to talk about Skedaddle. So, Skedaddle is a mechanism that's used to move a command from one location on the map to another in a relatively quick amount of time, where you're displacing everybody, and I don't want to use the word route because I don't think it's a route. It's supposed to be kind of an orderly withdrawal where units are falling back and then reforming at some location that's going to be specified elsewhere. So we have sickles down here. Man, pardon me. Let's say that these guys, let's see if I can grab all these guys and move them down here. Let's say they're all way back here. We've been pushed back. McLaw's division is moving up like this. These guys are over here. Let's pretend they're coming in hot over here. Things are looking bad for Sickles' Corps. Our HQ is right here, and within the next few turns, McLaw's is likely going to be able to overrun our headquarters. So when a headquarters is overrun, it's going to force a skedaddle. A skedaddle is very simple to implement in the game. You're literally going to pick up the headquarters and you're going to place it somewhere on the map. So I would take the headquarters and let's say I throw it down here. Then during my Union activity phase, I'm going to have to flip all of my infantry into column. All of my artillery is going to have to limber up, and we're going to have to move back to get to within command range of this new headquarters. My entire command structure is going to have to get back into radius of where the headquarters is at now. A couple things to note: you can leave zone of control. It's a useful thing to do. People think of it as having a totally negative connotation, but if you use it correctly, you can voluntarily skedaddle. In Sickles' case here, that's perhaps a good option. If he's under threat of being surrounded, or let's say there's another, group of units coming in from this side, and he's going to get cut off, because now, if he doesn't skedaddle, these guys are all going to be flipping into column right where these guys are going to be able to take pot shots as they're fleeing from their positions. A voluntary skedaddle can help alleviate that situation, perhaps, and the player chooses basically to give up their position and reform at a new location. Skedaddles in this game, in Last Chance for Victory, the Union player's probably going to be undertaking a couple of them on the first day, likely with 11th Corps, I would guess. I'm trying to think of where that headquarters is actually at. It's been a while since I've played the full first day scenarios. But it happens. And that's a way that you can end your order, is if you skedaddle. I probably said that like 5 times. I'm just rambling at this point. Okay, so those are really the main points I wanted to talk about. I think it might be prudent for us to take a look at some other situations where we might want to write an attack order. Let's move these guys back. I got people intermixed all over the place now. Once again, if I was a professional at this, I would be setting it up and then coming back to it. But at this point, I just want to get the video done and out there. So let's pretend that these guys, let's take these guys and we'll put them down here. Who knows what they're doing over there, but they are. Okay, so let's say the Confederates are situated up here This would have been maybe before we wrote our initial orders that we used in the last video. But let's say instead of making an attack towards the John Munschauer house, let's say we just want to get into a position at the John Wentz house so that we can then perhaps write an order that sends us on an attack order up here or an attack order down here or down here. We're not ready to commit our entire core to an attack order yet, but we want to reform kind of on a line situated maybe like this, running through the peach orchard over to Pitzer's schoolhouse. So how would we get this command over to there? This command right now is under no orders, so they're not within range of where they'd want to be. Well, we need to write an order to Longstreet. A move order would be legal. However, it's going to put us in a precarious situation. If you remember, when we go into a move order, we're going to have to be in column, and you're going to be strung out. You have to try to, there's some rules for how your columns are. You've got to try to be in kind of a column formation, moving by brigade. That's probably not optimal, because if we're in column formation, these guys, well, if we're playing an opposed game, they could be under orders and we might not know it. They could attack us while we're in column trying to get into position. That's probably not good. Even worse, let's say these guys would get attack orders and arrive at the John Wentz house before our units got over here, and we'd be in a heap of trouble. So a move order could get us there, but it's risky, probably not our best option. We can just write an attack order. This ground that's in front of these two armies at this point, nobody really owns it, so we would have to take it. You're taking ground. Technically, that requires an attack order. In this instance, we would just write our attack order to say maybe, take and hold a position along the Millerstown Road and moving north up the Emmitsburg Road, centered on the John Wentz house. So we could do an attack order and we could move into that position, get there, the attack order would be over, and then we'd revert back to no orders. While under the attack order, if these guys decided to move in front of us, we would be perfectly within our bounds to attack them however we chose to do so. Same thing if these units over here ended up getting there before we did. Well, now that we're under an attack order, even though that might have not been what we wanted to do initially, was engage the enemy, now we can, and we can take that position and we can do what we need to do to get where we wanted to be. And technically you have to, because you were written the order to attack that location. But the point here is, don't be afraid to use attack orders to move in short spurts, maybe to better reposition your headquarters, get your people in line where you want them. Move orders are really meant to take this corps and move it up to Oak Hill, or take this corps and move them down to Wintrode Ridge. It's really meant for moving behind enemy lines. If you're going to be in a position where the enemy might potentially engage you and you're going to be in column, that's a no-no. Don't do it if you're close to the enemy. Typically, you're going to be writing attack orders. Note, though, that if you are under those attack orders, you're going to be required to roll for Fluke stoppage. So even trying to get to this little setup here, you could have divisions that don't get there when they're supposed to. They might go into attack recovery and never get out of it. But things can happen. Once you start playing, you'll see that there really is a lot of variability to what you're telling people to do. It's not likely that things are going to go the way you want them to go every single time. Okay, so I think I'm going to end this video. We're through the command phase. We've talked about some situations where you might want to use attack orders over move orders. We've talked about the Fluke stoppage, the attack recovery. The next video, I want to focus and spend most of the time talking about initiative, reserves, some things that you can do with initiatives, some ways that I kind of play. And here at the end, let's just show you this. If you guys are getting into the system and you're a little bit intimidated by some of the rules, I would recommend downloading my little cheat sheet here. For instance, this is going to basically list out everything that happens in the orders phase. It's pretty easy to find the information that you need. You don't have to dig through the rule book. To be honest, I don't even use the rules half the time because I like the way this is organized a little bit better. For somebody new to the system, I think it would be helpful. I usually post a link to it when I put the video up. But anyways, it's out there. It's available. This is the part on command and control. I've also got some sheets where you can print them out and write your orders down. I like to have those, especially if I'm playing with other people. It's kind of fun to pass them the actual order, and then they open it up and read it just instead of putting it on notepad paper. But I'm cheesy like that. So this has all your other goodies, most of the stuff you're going to need for gameplay. I guess that's just my my plug here. But really, I just want to help people. So learn the system, enjoy it. I will hopefully try to get this up here tonight. We'll see. And I'm really looking forward to doing initiative and reserves because I think those are two very important things. They're a little bit more difficult to internalize sometimes, though, and understand. And we'll talk about some game-specific rules. None But Heroes specifically has some pretty cool things where those two rules come into effect. So that's it for now. We'll get this up there, and hopefully I can get the third and final video on orders up here sooner rather than later. Give me a couple weeks.